The ship loomed over Earth, casting a shadow that seemed to chill the air below. People on the ground could only stare. The craft, smooth, metallic, massive, was unmistakably alien. For weeks, Earth scientists, government officials, and every conspiracy theorist in the world speculated about what the newcomers might want. Finally, the waiting ended with a message, blunt and clear. The first video transmission from the Xyralaxians displayed their leader, Commander Tark, whose skin had a silvery, almost liquid sheen. Tark looked down at Earthlings through black, unblinking eyes. Behind him, his officers looked just as severe, each seated in a perfect row, arms folded. His voice, when it spoke, had a strange echo, as though he was speaking into a deep cave. "People of Earth," he began, his tone carrying a weight of boredom mixed with disdain. "Our arrival is a courtesy. We deemed it fair to make our presence known before assessing your world's potential." The transmission cut to scenes Tark's crew had filmed as they observed Earth. Images of skyscrapers, oceans, and sprawling cities flashed in succession, narrated by a voice dripping with disappointment. "You have managed some level of civilization, and basic intelligence seems present. But your attachments, your values..." Tark's lip curled. "They are primitive. You are overly sentimental. You show obsession with insignificant beings. Take, for example, your fascination with lesser creatures, your so-called pets." An image of a cat curled up on a couch filled the screen, then shifted to a family playing with a golden retriever, followed by a series of other common pets. Each scene was magnified to ridiculous proportions, as though Tark wanted to make sure no one missed his point. The alien soldiers around him sneered, exchanging glances and quietly laughing among themselves. Tark returned on the screen. "Such attachments reveal your weakness. How, we wonder, can creatures so fixated on dependency ever hope to conquer their own galaxy, let alone survive it?" The screen darkened, and Earth's leaders sat in stunned silence. In a military base on the other side of the world, Captain Jack Stone sat back in his chair, arms crossed as he watched the broadcast. Stone was a man of few words and fewer smiles, known for his unshakable calm and an unbreakable will to win. He'd seen combat, sure. But this was different. And he didn't like the way they mocked people, or what they loved. "Aliens invade, and they pick on the pets," muttered his fellow soldier, Jenkins, sitting beside him. "Almost funny, isn't it?" Stone cracked a smile, but his eyes stayed cold. "They think they've figured us out. But I don't think they know the first thing about us." He paused, then leaned forward. "Get a transport ready. I have an idea." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Jenkins followed orders without asking questions, though his curiosity grew every step of the way. They loaded the ship with equipment, secured supplies, and then came the odd part. Jack insisted on clearing out the largest containment area, making special modifications to it. They gathered medical supplies, rations, everything they might need. But as they began to close up, Jenkins couldn't help himself any longer. "So what's the plan, Captain?" Jenkins asked, glancing at the unusually sturdy enclosure Jack had ordered installed in the transport bay. "What exactly are we bringing with us?" Jack smiled, but he didn't say anything at first. Instead, he walked to the back of the transport bay, checking the cage's locks, testing the seals, ensuring everything was secure. After a moment, he turned back to Jenkins. "They want to sneer at our pets?" Jack finally said, voice low and calm. "Fine. Let's show them what a real Earth pet can do." Jenkins looked between Jack and the enclosure, eyes widening as he realized what his commander meant. "You're not seriously bringing him, are you?" Jack nodded. "He's the best we've got. Strong, adaptable, and with the right motivation, he'll follow my lead anywhere." The cage rattled, a low, deep growl emanating from within. Jenkins swallowed hard, not quite sure he could believe what he was hearing. On the day of departure, Stone and his team boarded the transport. Jack ran through a final check, making sure the cargo was settled. They locked down the ship and lifted off, the whole crew tense and curious about what exactly their captain had planned. As they reached the Xyralaxian vessel, Jack was greeted by a group of alien soldiers, each staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. They led him to a large, open hall, where Tark himself waited, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Captain Stone," Tark greeted, barely masking his disdain. "I must admit, your willingness to meet us here shows some spirit, if nothing else." "Spirit's all we need," Stone replied, matching Tark's icy gaze. "I heard you like mocking our lesser creatures. Figured I'd introduce you to one of them personally." The other aliens exchanged glances, their silvered faces twisting into amused smirks. Tark raised an eyebrow, giving Stone a withering look. "Oh, how delightful! You think your primitive beasts will impress us?" Stone didn't answer. Instead, he gestured back toward the transport bay, where the sealed enclosure was slowly being rolled in by his team. The sound of claws scratching against metal echoed through the hall, each heavy step reverberating in the stillness. The aliens shifted, looking at each other, a few of them visibly unnerved. "Go ahead," Stone said, gesturing to the control panel. "Take a look for yourselves." One of Tark's officers approached the cage, tapping the glass with an irritated sneer. Inside, a pair of intense eyes gleamed back. With a slow, powerful movement, the creature inside rose to its full height, dwarfing the officer by several feet. The officer stumbled back, his bravado quickly replaced by shock. Stone stifled a grin as Tark's expression turned from amusement to surprise. "Meet my friend," Stone said, voice steady. "We call him Grizzly. Figured if we're bringing pets to the party, we might as well go big." The bear bared its teeth, releasing a guttural growl that sent a shiver down the spines of everyone present, alien or human. Its massive paws pressed against the glass, and even Tark had to take a step back, his smirk fading fast. "This is the pride of your world?" Tark sneered, attempting to cover his discomfort. "One wild animal?" Stone nodded, still smiling. "It's not about what he is. It's about what he can do. You may have your ships, your tech, your strategy, but there's one thing you don't have." "And what is that?" Tark demanded, voice edged with irritation. "Survival instinct," Stone replied. "And if you push us hard enough, we've got plenty more where he came from." Tark's eyes narrowed, his amusement now entirely gone. The Xyralaxians were quiet, their once smug expressions now wary, uncertain. Stone gave them a calm, steady look, silently daring them to test their assumptions. "You don't get it yet," Stone added, voice low. "But you will." As he turned to leave, the bear let out a final, low growl that seemed to linger in the air long after they'd left the hall, leaving the aliens to reconsider just how much they really knew about Earth and its lesser creatures. The journey from Earth to the Xyralaxian command ship took 3 days. For Captain Jack Stone and his crew, each hour passed in tense silence as they neared the alien vessel. The hum of the ship's engines filled the empty spaces, broken only by the occasional clang of claws on metal echoing from the back of the transport bay. Stone's team had been briefed on the mission, but none of them could truly grasp what they were doing. Jenkins, Stone's second-in-command, sat across from him, arms folded, watching the captain with a mixture of curiosity and unease. "So, we're really going through with this?" Jenkins finally asked, his eyes drifting toward the containment area. "You're putting Earth's future in the paws of a bear?" Stone met Jenkins' gaze, his face calm. "Not just any bear, Jenkins. This isn't about brute force. It's about giving them a taste of what they don't understand." Jenkins shook his head, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're banking on the idea that a wild animal can make them rethink their whole strategy?" Stone leaned forward, his gaze unflinching. "Think about it. They see us as weak because we care about our animals, our world. They think we're soft. But there's nothing soft about survival instinct. A bear like Grizzly isn't just muscle, he's instinct and adaptability. He's everything we are when we're pushed to the edge." Jenkins sighed, still unconvinced but willing to trust Stone's judgment. "All right. But if this goes sideways—" "It won't," Stone interrupted, a hint of a smile on his lips. "The Xyralaxians haven't seen what we're capable of yet. And when they do, they won't forget it. They arrived at the Xyralaxian ship with their transport positioned to dock. The landing was smooth, and the moment they touched down, Stone felt the subtle hum of alien machinery vibrating through the walls. The Xyralaxians had cleared a massive docking bay for them, one that was flanked on either side by sleek, towering columns of alien soldiers, each standing rigid and expressionless. The docking ramp lowered, and Stone led his team down, his steps slow and deliberate. Grizzly's containment cage was wheeled down behind them, covered in shadows but unmistakably massive. Alien eyes flicked to it, then quickly away as if refusing to acknowledge the imposing figure within. Commander Tark awaited them at the center of the hall, arms folded, his silvery skin catching the strange lighting of the ship. Beside him stood a few high-ranking officers, each wearing the same expression of disdain they'd shown in the first transmission. "Captain Stone," Tark greeted, his voice dripping with barely concealed boredom. "You've traveled far. I hope you don't expect much from this demonstration of yours." Stone met Tark's eyes, keeping his expression neutral. "Expectations aside, Commander, you'll see things you don't understand. And that's exactly why we're here." Tark's gaze slid over to the cage, where Grizzly was now standing, claws lightly raking the metal floor as he stared back with dark, calculating eyes. Tark's mouth twisted into a smirk. "An Earth creature, trapped in a cage. Tell me, Captain, what do you think this thing will accomplish?" Stone tilted his head, his voice steady. "You see a creature. I see a fighter. Just because he's in a cage doesn't mean he's helpless." With a nod, he signaled Jenkins, who entered a code on the cage's control panel. A low hiss filled the air as the doors slowly opened, revealing Grizzly in all his raw, untamed power. The bear took a step forward, his massive frame dwarfing the soldiers standing nearby. His eyes swept over the aliens, unafraid, assessing, calculating. The room went silent. The Xyralaxians held their ground, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed a few of their faces. Tark stepped forward, arms still folded, though his posture had stiffened. "This is your grand display?" Tark scoffed, though his voice lacked the confidence it once had. "A single animal from your planet? What do you expect it to do, Captain?" Stone's expression remained calm. "You'll see soon enough." He gave a sharp whistle, a sound Grizzly recognized from their countless hours of training. The bear's ears perked up, and in a swift motion, he dropped into a crouch, his muscles tensing as if ready to strike. His eyes locked onto Tark's, unblinking and fierce. The aliens flinched. Stone's team stood at attention, watching as Stone raised a hand. With a simple gesture, he directed Grizzly toward the empty center of the hall. The bear lumbered forward, his steps slow, heavy, purposeful. Stone called out commands, guiding him through maneuvers they'd drilled to perfection back on Earth. To the aliens, it looked like a primitive display, a brute following simple orders. But Stone knew better. Every move was designed to show one thing: raw power, driven by something the Xyralaxians couldn't replicate: willpower. The alien soldiers shifted uncomfortably, their gazes flicking between the massive bear and their commander, who watched with a strained calm. Then, without warning, Stone clapped twice, and Grizzly charged forward, letting out a deep, earth-shaking roar that reverberated through the hall. The alien soldiers took an involuntary step back, their expressions betraying their unease. Tark's face twisted in irritation as he tried to regain control. "Enough of this display. If you wish to impress us, show us something of substance. This animal lacks the intelligence we prize." Stone kept his gaze steady. "Intelligence, Commander? You're looking at it all wrong. Intelligence isn't the only advantage on the battlefield. Sometimes survival comes down to pure, unbreakable drive. And Earth's creatures, they know survival better than any advanced weapon." Tark's smirk faltered. "Perhaps you overestimate your planet's creatures." Stone gestured to his team, who slowly backed away, clearing the area around Grizzly. The bear seemed to sense the tension, his posture more predatory, his movements coiled and ready. "Commander, I invite you to come a bit closer," Stone said, voice level. "See for yourself what he's capable of." The room went silent, and Tark hesitated for the first time. But he forced himself forward, stepping into Grizzly's line of sight, his gaze hardening as he held the bear's intense stare. Stone observed, his eyes never leaving Tark's face, waiting. A low growl escaped Grizzly's throat, his body tense, every muscle prepared for action. Tark took a small step back, a flicker of doubt crossing his features. Stone saw it, the hesitation, the fear barely hidden behind the alien commander's eyes. "We humans don't just form attachments," Stone said quietly, his voice carrying across the hall. "We understand strength. Not just technology, not just strategy, but the kind of strength that keeps you alive, no matter the odds." The bear's claws scraped the floor, and Tark's officers exchanged nervous glances, clearly unnerved. Tark stood his ground, but the confidence in his sneer had faded. "Take your creature," Tark said, his voice tight. "We have no interest in primitive displays." Stone raised a hand, signaling Grizzly to step back, though the bear kept his eyes fixed on Tark, as if studying him. "This primitive display is just a taste, Commander. Earth has plenty more, and we're not afraid to use it." Without another word, Stone and his team turned, leading Grizzly back to the transport. Behind him, he could feel the aliens' eyes watching, their confidence shaken, their sneers replaced with uncertainty. As the Earth transport hovered in the docking bay of the Xyralaxian command ship, Stone's team prepared for the next phase of the mission. They'd seen the ripple of unease in the Xyralaxians after Grizzly's display, but Stone knew the aliens' confidence wasn't entirely shattered yet. It was time to raise the stakes. Jenkins strapped in beside Stone, a cautious look in his eyes. "So, Captain, what's the plan now? I mean, Grizzly gave them a scare, sure, but they're not backing down." Stone gave a small nod, eyes focused as he thought through every detail of the strategy. "You're right, Jenkins. A single bear won't win this fight. But it's about more than that." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "We're going to show them the wild, unpredictable side of Earth. And when they see it, they'll know we're not a species to underestimate." Moments later, the docking ramp lowered, and Stone stepped off with Grizzly at his side, keeping his team behind him. Several Xyralaxian guards watched from the sides, silver eyes narrowed, but one alien, Commander Tark himself, stepped forward, an irritated scowl etched into his metallic face. "Captain Stone," Tark said with a tone of forced patience, "I was under the impression your display was complete. Yet you return. Why?" Stone smiled, gesturing to his team. "Commander, you wanted to understand Earth's strengths. I'm here to show you something beyond a simple pet." He paused, letting his words settle. "I'm here to show you that the creatures of Earth fight with us. They're more than tools, they're our allies." Tark raised an eyebrow, his sneer returning as he looked from Stone to the containment area on the transport. "Allies, you say? This bond with your creatures. I find it a laughable weakness, a hindrance to true strength." Stone's smile didn't falter. "True strength, Commander, isn't about tech alone. It's about adaptability, survival, and the will to protect what's yours." He signaled to his team. Jenkins and the others opened the transport, pulling out several smaller containment units. From each one, they released an array of animals: hawks with fierce eyes, wolves with powerful muscles rippling beneath their fur, and a pair of trained attack dogs who moved in disciplined silence. Tark's eyes narrowed, his expression showing a hint of something new, unease. "These are Earth's warriors," Stone said, voice steady. "Each one trained and ready. Not through programming or circuitry, but through instinct and loyalty." One of the hawks took flight, swooping low over Tark and his guards, who instinctively ducked. Stone watched the commander's jaw clench, his facade of confidence slipping just a bit more. "Such chaos," Tark muttered, brushing off the unsettling moment as best he could. "Uncontrolled beasts, responding to mere instinct. What could you possibly hope to accomplish with this?" Stone gave a low whistle, and instantly, the animals responded, aligning themselves around him in tight formation. The wolves flanked his sides, the hawks circled above, and the dogs sat poised, eyes alert. The display was a perfectly orchestrated scene of control and cooperation, a silent message that Earth's creatures weren't merely beasts. They were skilled allies, capable of coordination far beyond what the Xyralaxians expected. Instinct and loyalty, Stone replied, his voice unwavering, are stronger than any code or command. When pushed, they don't retreat. They fight. Tark shifted, visibly annoyed but unable to ignore the sight in front of him. All this, over pets and beasts. Such attachments will be your downfall, Captain. Stone met his gaze, a steely glint in his eyes. Or it'll be the reason we win. Tark opened his mouth to reply, but the room shook as the alarm blared, pulsing red across the ship's walls. A voice echoed through the comms, alien words tumbling out in urgency. Stone recognized the tone, if not the language. Something was wrong. Tark muttered a curse in his own tongue, his face twisting in frustration. A moment later, another alien officer ran up to Tark, speaking quickly in their native language. Stone watched as Tark's face tightened, his silver skin paling slightly. It was clear, an unknown force had attacked the ship. Tark's eyes flicked back to Stone, a flash of doubt evident. Captain, it appears we're under siege. I assume this is none of your doing? Stone raised his hands, an innocent smile crossing his face. Not at all, Commander. But I'd be happy to lend you some assistance. The irritation in Tark's face was evident, but he was backed into a corner. Without replying, he nodded sharply, gesturing for Stone to follow as he marched down a corridor, alien soldiers trailing closely. Stone motioned to his team, who brought the animals along, each creature attuned to the tension in the air. Grizzly's head swiveled, sharp eyes taking in the foreign surroundings, while the hawks above cast wary glances. They were ready, more ready, Stone realized, than any alien tech could prepare them to be. When they reached the main hangar, the scale of the attack was clear. The hull of the Xyralaxian ship had been breached, and an array of heavily armed, multi-limbed alien invaders poured through the gaping hole, their spiked limbs slicing through Tark's guards with brutal efficiency. Tark's soldiers hesitated, their once imposing ranks breaking as the unfamiliar attackers overwhelmed them. Tark himself paled, visibly caught off guard, his once steady confidence faltering. Stone wasted no time. Let my team take point, he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. We've got a plan for this. Without waiting for Tark's response, Stone whistled sharply, signaling the animals. The wolves charged forward, weaving through the alien invaders with feral speed, striking with jaws and claws in a synchronized assault. The hawks dove down, sharp talons slicing across the invaders' exposed skin, leaving trails of confusion and pain. Grizzly barreled into the fray, his massive frame like a battering ram as he knocked invaders back, his roars echoing in the cavernous space. Stone watched as the invaders struggled, their calculated attacks crumbling under the onslaught of raw, unpredictable force. Jenkins led the attack dogs, who darted between Tark's retreating soldiers, biting at the limbs of the invaders, forcing them to stumble, breaking their formation. Stone could see the doubt in Tark's eyes as he watched the creatures he mocked hold their own, each one fighting with an unrestrained tenacity the Xyralaxian soldiers lacked. Tark, once smug and confident, now looked between Stone and the chaos unfolding, his voice a low growl. Captain, this is madness. Stone didn't break eye contact, his voice calm. It's survival, Commander. Something Earth knows better than any machine or code. For the first time, Stone saw a flicker of fear cross Tark's face, an acknowledgement of a strength he hadn't anticipated. In the midst of the battle, Tark's soldiers regrouped, rallying behind the Earth creatures, using their unpredictable moves as cover to launch counterattacks. As the invaders faltered, Grizzly let out one final, deafening roar, the sound carrying through the hangar and sending the remaining invaders scrambling for retreat. Tark's forces moved in quickly, finishing off the stragglers, the tide of the battle finally turning. The aftermath of the battle left the Xyralaxian ship's hangar in shambles. Metallic fragments and alien blood stained the floor, a vivid reminder of the clash that had rattled even the most seasoned soldiers. Captain Jack Stone and his team stood in the center, his animals forming a protective ring around them, still on high alert, eyes tracking every movement. Commander Tark, visibly shaken, observed the scene in silence. The veneer of superiority he'd worn so confidently had cracked, exposing something new in his gaze, something Stone recognized as respect, if not quite admiration. Stone took a step forward, wiping the sweat from his brow as he surveyed Tark's remaining forces. Well, Commander, it looks like Earth's weakness kept your ship from being overrun. Tark's eyes narrowed, defensive pride flaring up. You got lucky, Captain. This show of brute force was effective, yes. But it was chaotic, uncontrolled. Machines would not hesitate. They don't rely on instinct. Stone smiled, unperturbed. Instinct is exactly what won that fight, Commander. Earth's creatures adapt in ways you can't predict. They're not just following orders, they're reacting, thinking. That's why they're here with us. He whistled, and the animals responded instantly, each taking position around the humans in a calm, coordinated formation. Grizzly let out a low growl, and the hawks returned to their perches, settling down but with sharp eyes still scanning for threats. Tark's officers shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the humans and their animal allies with newfound wariness. It was clear they hadn't expected anything like this level of control or partnership, and the uneasy silence that followed showed they were struggling to reconcile their preconceived notions with the raw reality before them. Fine, Tark said, breaking the silence, his voice strained. I'll admit your allies fought well. But this does not mean Earth's methods are superior. Technology is still the future, Captain. Stone kept his expression steady, knowing Tark was clinging to the last shred of his worldview. You're right, technology has its place. But it's not everything. Sometimes survival demands something more. The Xyralaxian commander's eyes flickered, a faint crack in his iron resolve. Stone continued, his voice calm but insistent. Tell me, Commander, have your machines ever fought for you because they wanted to? Because they believed in what they were protecting? Tark's silence was answer enough. His officers exchanged glances, the hard edges of their expressions softening slightly as the question sank in. Stone gestured to Grizzly, who stepped forward, his dark eyes fixed on Tark with an intensity that seemed to pierce right through him. This bear isn't here because he has to be. He's here because he trusts me, because we're partners. And that loyalty? That's something no machine can replicate. Tark's face twisted with reluctance, his pride grappling with the undeniable truth in Stone's words. His gaze shifted to the animals, each one still poised, disciplined, ready for action. Finally, Tark nodded, stiffly. Very well, Captain Stone. You've proven that your methods have value. But tell me, what other creatures do you Earthlings possess? Stone's smile grew. Glad you asked, Commander? He signaled Jenkins, who immediately brought forth a handheld tablet, displaying footage of various Earth creatures in action, eagles with razor-sharp talons diving through trees, dolphins coordinating to herd fish, even elephants working together to defend their young against predators. The alien officers leaned in, fascinated despite themselves. Stone watched their reactions closely, noting the spark of curiosity that flickered in their usually stoic expressions. This wasn't just a lesson in strategy anymore. It was a revelation about Earth's true strength. These animals, Stone explained, his voice low but carrying across the hall, are all skilled in survival. Some are apex predators, others rely on teamwork, adaptability. But all of them fight for something: territory, family, survival. Tark's brows furrowed as he studied the screen, his pride giving way to intrigue. And you claim these instincts make them more effective than technology? Not always, Stone admitted. But in a situation where adaptability and quick responses matter more than programmed precision, then yes. Because these creatures can think on their feet, react to threats as they come. Jenkins stepped forward, joining in. The way our animals work together is something unique, Commander. We don't just rely on them, we learn from them. And when they're by our side, we're stronger for it. Tark let out a slow, reluctant sigh, the weight of his own rigid beliefs bearing down on him. But Stone sensed he was breaking through, that a seed of understanding had taken root. So, Tark said, his voice softer, almost hesitant. You are saying that Earth's strength lies in partnerships? In the bond between you and these creatures? Stone nodded. Exactly. We adapt to each other's strengths. We fill in each other's weaknesses. It's not just about command. It's about trust. Tark's gaze shifted to his own soldiers, who had watched the exchange in stunned silence. Stone could see the dawning realization in their eyes as they glanced at each other, as if wondering what they might accomplish with such allies by their side. A sudden alarm blared, startling everyone. A Xyralaxian officer ran forward, shouting something urgently in his native language. Tark's face darkened as he translated the report in his mind. Another wave, he muttered. An even larger force, armed to the teeth and headed directly for us. Stone's hand clenched, his mind instantly calculating. He turned to Tark, voice steady and firm. Let us help. This time, we'll fight together. For a brief moment, Tark hesitated, his pride and his pragmatism locked in battle. But he took a breath, nodding. Very well, Captain. Your forces will join ours. Within minutes, Stone and his team were deployed alongside the Xyralaxian soldiers, their animals integrated seamlessly into the formation. Tark watched in awe as the wolves moved in synchronized steps with the soldiers, the hawks circling above to provide aerial surveillance, Grizzly stationed at the front, a force of nature unto himself. As the enemy forces breached the perimeter, Stone's hawks swooped down, delivering quick, decisive blows to the attackers' eyes and weak spots, disorienting them. The wolves darted in, targeting vulnerable joints with precision honed by years of training. Tark's soldiers took advantage of every opening, quickly adapting their own techniques to complement the animals' attacks. Grizzly roared, charging forward with an unstoppable force, his massive body breaking the enemy's lines, creating a path for Tark's soldiers to follow. Stone and his team coordinated every move, guiding the animals, trusting them to respond instinctively to the changing flow of battle. Tark, caught up in the action, found himself fighting shoulder to shoulder with one of Stone's wolves. The animal didn't falter, its sharp eyes focused, movements fluid and precise. Tark felt an odd surge of respect, not just for the wolf, but for the human who had trained it to be this fierce, this loyal. As the battered Xyralaxian ship sailed through the aftermath of battle, Tark stood on the command deck beside Captain Jack Stone, watching the distant stars flicker against the blackness of space. The silence between them was heavy, but not tense. It held a mutual respect forged in the fire of an unexpected alliance. You know, Tark said, his voice calm but thoughtful. I once thought Earthlings were sentimental to the point of weakness. I could not understand the connection you have with these creatures. Now, though, he trailed off, glancing at Grizzly, who sat beside Stone, licking a few scrapes on his paw with a ferocity softened by familiarity. Stone gave a small nod, his eyes still fixed on the distant stars. It's not just about connection, Commander. It's about shared purpose. Earth's creatures, like Grizzly here, they aren't just trained to follow orders. They're part of the team, part of our survival. That's something we learn from nature, not from machines. Tark let Stone's words settle. He knew they had both witnessed how quickly machines could fail under pressure, how easily programmed precision could crumble when faced with the unpredictable. But these creatures? They'd fought with raw, unyielding drive. In their own way, they had led his troops just as much as Stone had. The quiet was interrupted by the beep of an alert. A Xyralaxian officer turned toward Tark, his face grim. Commander, another enemy fleet has been detected. They're approaching fast, and they outnumber us 5-1. Tark's brow furrowed, frustration flaring in his gaze. They must have regrouped after the last assault, he muttered. He glanced at Stone, as though looking for answers, but his expression betrayed the depth of his doubt. We're severely weakened, Captain. Even with your animals, we cannot hold off a force this large. Stone looked at Tark, his face calm, his mind already forming a plan. Then let's stop trying to hold them off. Let's take the fight to them. Tark's eyes narrowed. How do you mean? Stone leaned in, his voice low but steady. They're coming to crush us, expecting us to defend ourselves the same way as before. But if we surprise them, if we strike first, with everything we've got, we might catch them off guard. My team, my animals, we've got one last trick up our sleeves. Tark stared at Stone, the tension clear in his face as he weighed the risk. But in that moment, he understood that Stone's plan wasn't just about survival. It was about challenging expectations, shattering the predictable patterns of defense. He nodded, his decision made. Very well, Captain. I will follow your lead. In the minutes that followed, Stone and his team prepared for what would be the boldest assault yet. Grizzly, the wolves, the hawks, all were prepped and ready, as were Tark's remaining soldiers, each one steeling themselves for the battle that lay ahead. The Xyralaxian ship shifted course, engines roaring as they moved toward the enemy fleet. Stone stood at the head of the tactical briefing, his voice calm and confident. They're expecting us to wait to defend this ship. Instead, we're going to hit them hard, right at their command center. My team and I, with the animals, will infiltrate their lead ship. We'll disrupt their command structure and, if all goes well, create enough chaos to turn the tide in our favor. One of Tark's officers looked skeptical. But how can these creatures accomplish such a feat? This is their largest fleet yet, Captain. Stone's smile was steady, unbreakable. That's the beauty of Earth's creatures. They don't fight by the book. They fight with instinct, and that's exactly what they're going to do. When they closed in on the enemy fleet, the Xyralaxian ship rocked as the first shots were fired, energy blasts rippling against its shields. Stone gave a sharp nod, signaling his team, and they moved into action, his animals following close behind. Grizzly lumbered forward, his dark eyes alert as he moved alongside the human soldiers. The hawks, perched on Jenkins' outstretched arms, prepared to launch the moment they entered the enemy vessel. The wolves flanked them, their quiet snarls echoing in the corridor as they readied themselves for battle. In one coordinated strike, they launched their assault on the enemy ship, a precision maneuver that relied on stealth, speed, and pure, unadulterated aggression. Stone led the way, his animals darting through the corridors, a blur of fur, claws, and feathered fury. The hawks took to the air, diving at the alien soldiers' exposed eyes and joints, forcing them to scatter in confusion. Grizzly tore through ranks of the enemy soldiers with a raw power that sent tremors through the enemy lines, his massive form barreling forward like a living battering ram. Beside him, the wolves darted in and out of the melee, their teeth finding vulnerable points, their agility unmatched. The enemy's initial defense crumbled under the onslaught, their disciplined formation shattering as they struggled to contain the primal, unpredictable force tearing through their ranks. The Xyralaxian soldiers, watching from the screens aboard their own ship, were transfixed, all flickering in their eyes. Stone pushed forward, his focus unyielding as he led his team deeper into the heart of the enemy vessel. He'd memorized the layout, each turn and corridor burned into his mind from briefings and surveillance. And with each step, he knew they were getting closer to the command center. When they reached the core, a group of alien soldiers waited, weapons raised, their postures tense. But Stone's hawk struck first, diving down, talons slicing through exposed armor, leaving trails of confusion and chaos. The wolves charged in next, seizing the momentary lapse to close in, their teeth and claws leaving devastation in their wake. In the middle of the chaos, Stone spotted their commander, a tall, imposing alien with armor thicker than the others. Stone signaled Grizzly, and without hesitation, the bear charged, a living force of nature bearing down on the enemy leader with a strength that sent ripples of shock through every remaining soldier. The alien commander raised a weapon, but Grizzly was faster, his massive paw swiping down, knocking the weapon aside. The commander staggered, and Stone moved in, his rifle raised, every nerve in his body honed and ready. You underestimated us, Stone said, his voice cold and steady. That was your first mistake. With a final, decisive shot, he brought the commander down. The remaining enemy soldiers faltered, their unity shattered as they realized their leader was gone. Stone seized the moment, raising his voice over the din. Stand down! Your command has fallen. One by one, the enemy soldiers backed away, lowering their weapons, casting wary glances at the animals that still held their positions, unyielding, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Stone and his team watched as the last of the enemy forces surrendered, the weight of the victory settling over them like a final, quiet sigh. Back on the Xyrilaxian ship, Tark stood in stunned silence, watching the scenes unfold on the screens. His officers exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. Stone and his team returned to the Xyrilaxian vessel, his animals flanking him, victorious but calm, each one reflecting the silent strength they'd shown in battle. As they entered the command deck, Tark met Stone's gaze, a flicker of something deep and humbled in his eyes.